Okay, we are on air and it is 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, Welcome everyone to the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, November 30th. We've got 3 items on the agenda today, and our first one, as usual, is our public transit ridership report. And just once again, remind everybody, if this is a subject you're interested in, please tune in to this meeting usually the fourth Thursday of the month. But we moved it back this month because of the holiday and having a fifth Thursday, so I think it's a fifth Thursday, I can't remember. Maybe it's the fourth Thursday, but anyway, 4 o'clock in this committee, every month we talk about public transit and street improvement projects, bond projects, all the type of stuff that we interact with on a daily basis out in the community when we're traveling. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the public transit ridership report. We have Taylor here with us.
Thank you, council member, and I apologize in advance for my voice and cough, just allergies or something, so hopefully I can make it through without sounding too terrible. But very exciting month, last month in October with the route changes, so we'll walk through some of that with the ridership. But first, just want to update you on a few things. Transit Center was obviously completed last month, so this will probably be the last month you see it on your report, which is kind of exciting. Hopefully we can start condensing our report down a little bit more. Council did officially accept and allow us to pay that final payment for retainage on Tuesday, so that project should be closing out. We are finalizing the sewer line issue that we had. We're doing the walkthrough tomorrow, so that's all pretty close to being done. We should open those restrooms up on Monday at the latest, so we're pretty excited about that for our staff and for the passengers. Nothing really new on grants. We're still working through the procurement process for the 6 CNG cutaway buses for the paratransit fleet. We got a FTA Low-No grant in the summer, and it's just taken us a little bit of time to find a good contract to piggyback off of, so we don't have to do our own and secure that. So we'll be coming to you soon with a acceptance of the grant and authorization to purchase, hopefully in the next month or two. And then kind of dovetailing off that with the maintenance and procurement, we should receive 3 of the 5 Ford Transits that we already had on order for the paratransit fleet in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we'll get all of them before Christmas, but we're still experiencing some delays with vehicles post-COVID, so we've just kind of had that push back and back. A lot of good fleet replacement happening this year, as we've talked about, and we don't necessarily need to dive into, but just a lot of things happening as a result of grants and purchases we made the last couple of years finally coming to fruition. What I really want to get into is we have a few reports more than normal because of the route changes. I don't know if you saw those, but we have one for the entire month of October. Then we have the 1st through the 15th, which was pre-route changes, and then the 16th through the 31st. So I'm not going to walk through every page of all 3 of those reports, and then we have the Norman On Demand one, which we'll finish up on, but I'm not going to walk through every page. But both the pre and post and then the overall, we saw a ridership increase. We saw all the metrics pretty much go up. Some of the routes, it's going to look like they decreased, but it's, we change things, right? This route no longer has this section, and now this route has that section. So some routes I think are going to fluctuate over the next year. For example, 121 Alameda, it did a full hour route first route change, and now it's just a 30-minute route with the 122 being the other 30 minutes. So they're kind of treated separately. So obviously I think 121's ridership is going to decrease if you just look at it that way, but the overall system is going to go up. I hope, as people respond to the route changes. So, and specifically for the month of October, we had 35,671 riders for the whole system. And then last October in 2022, we had just shy of 27,960. So a pretty good increase. The average total daily ridership, which I really like to harp on, was 1372, which was a 27.63 increase over 1,075 last October, so we're seeing about 1,300, 1,400 people ride per day on average. And our fiscal year to date is just a little bit lower than 50% over last year, so we're on pace to eclipse last year's fiscal year to date ridership number. So I think it's important to, again, I won't go through every page of the report, but if you look at the 1st through the 15th and then the 16th through the 31st, again, the overall ridership still went up when you, and there, we're comparing the 1st through the 15th of October 2022 as well. So those numbers are shown there in those reports. So hopefully that means that passengers are responding and like the route changes. I know we had some complaints filter through, which we assume there would be, but overall it looks like it's turning out pretty well. So happy to take any questions on the ridership for those or the route changes, and then I can get into the Norman on Demand after that.
We first talk about the transit center. So
Yeah.
The fixes, I guess, that have been needed, has there been any kind of budget on that?
Hey, what?
A budget on the
Well-
cost to fix the main line and then the pavement issue that we had talked about before as well, I guess?
It was a emergency repair for the sewer line, so I'll have to get with facility maintenance to see what the final number was. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Is it not something you're gonna need to be coming to us for?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we might still be interested to know what that cost was. And then is the pavement part that you mentioned where we didn't replace it, and once the buses started using it, they kind of started digging grooves into it?
Oh, yeah, we did that repair. You probably have seen it. We were able to do that in-house with our street crew, so that was something we were able to do. And it wasn't super expensive. But yeah, once it was that 40-year-old asphalt that we kind of put lipstick on, and it had a perfect a puddle, and then the bus wheel on top of it. It just over time, the rest of the pavement's doing okay. It was just that one spot that seemed to have all the right things happen for it. So
Okay.
I anticipate at some point in the future we'll have to do something more severe or more
Yeah,
construction to make that hardened concrete probably.
okay. And is the bathroom there reopened now, or is it still closed?
So
Both
we're
of the
doing a
bathrooms, I
walkthrough
guess.
in the morning, tomorrow morning. It should be all good, but we need to give the contractor the thumbs up. And we might be able to open up the public one tomorrow, but downstairs where the staff restrooms are, they need to buff and finish out the floors. So that will probably be Monday, but we might be able to open up the public ones tomorrow.
Okay,
But if at all, it'll be Monday for both of them at the latest.
okay. And then the stop at the transit center that is on Porter, that we talked about, definitely see a lot of folks stand in there. They're using the makeshift kind of bench that's there.
Right.
The concrete one. But we do have plans to put, if I recall, to put a shelter there.
We talked about it at some point, but then we didn't want to do it until we were for sure that what we wanted to do there. So we definitely will revisit that. Right now, we don't have a budget for it or anything, but yeah, we could
Yeah.
definitely revisit
It
it.
seems that route seems to be pretty heavily used.
Yeah.
I see a lot of folks standing right there waiting for it.
I think we were wondering if riders for that route would wait under the awning near the facility and just wait for the route to come, right? Rather than stand on the sidewalk if there was inclement weather or something. So we weren't sure if we wanted to invest in a shelter if people were going to use the transit center just to wait for the bus. So now that we're seeing that, we probably do need to revisit if we want to put something there on the street.
Okay.
So,
And then all the new stops. I know we've talked about that a lot of the old shelters would be moved to the new stops, and where there's not a stop anymore, those benches, those
Right.
shelters would be moved. We're still in the process of that.
yeah, Tyler Media has done some of them, but I think there are some that are remaining to be removed and reinstalled. So I know they have done some, and then hopefully the next step, Tyler Media is very interested in putting in some more shelters along some of the new bus stops or some of the other locations. So hopefully we can expand that infrastructure in the near future too.
The one specific one that I've noticed is in front of Faculty Heights Park on Lindsay. There are two stops on the other side of the street. One is one of the nice.
Between Classen and 12th?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
And so the one in front of Faculty Heights Park is a new stop, and I've definitely been seeing a lot of folks standing there waiting with their
Yeah.
their stuff. So
I think we're going to need a couple of months of data to prioritize. Like we want to make sure we're putting shelters where there's a significant amount of ridership because we're not just putting them everywhere. So I think once we get past the new year, January, we'll know. I know we can see it right now, but we want to make sure we're putting them where they're needed.
yeah, I'd
That
like
makes
to
sense.
have at least a bench where possible,
Right.
if it can be done. Just hate seeing people like sitting on the curb waiting for the bus to come.
Right.
Yeah. And then I saw from the 16th to the 31st, because I think even when we were getting ready to make this change, several of us expressed concern about changing the East Lindsay route. And, Brooks versus Lindsay, Brandywine versus Biloxi,
Right.
and looks like there's increased ridership from that, but I know that's something Councilmember Ball was concerned about as well, was,
Right.
Biloxi, there are lots of apartments, existing stops. Brandywine, there's apartments there too, but I know the goal was to expand the service further out and
Right.
maybe capture more people, but in doing so, having to eliminate existing stops, which was a challenge, so.
Yeah. I haven't really received, and I have 3 small children, so I could have forgotten, but I don't think we've received any complaints about the Biloxi to Brandywine change. But we did receive one about, specifically about Summer Point, that stopped there, Brooks and 12th, just last week, I think. So about two and a half weeks in, from Summer Point, and we explained the reason and everything. But other than that, that's
That was
what
the
we've
one I was
heard.
most concerned about too, because it was
Right.
heavily used, that stop.
And not to diminish it, but it's just the one request to put the stop back from the apartment complex itself. I haven't heard from residents of the apartment complex, unless you all have, and I haven't seen that. But
I haven't.
so I'm not saying it's not a problem. We just
Sure.
haven't heard that feedback. So
Okay. And then the Adult Wellness and Education Center. So I had thought that there was a stop on the east side of the street on Porter, but I guess the only stop is on the west side of Porter
Right.
going south.
right.
And so they would have to get off, cross Porter, and then walk through the Norman Regional parking lot area to get
Right.
to it, which when I thought it was on the other side of the street, I was like, well, it's equidistance-ish, but
It's
Now-
roughly
yeah.
the same distance from the Finley and Oliver stop that was pre-change,
Right.
roughly.
that was just a straight line down the street.
It is,
though,
yeah, straight line of sight there. If you do walk the path from the Porter and Johnson intersection, specifically the northwest corner is where the bus stop will be once the streetscape kind of comes through and makes that a little cleaner. It's a relatively good path through Norman Regional. There's just one section there towards the end that there isn't a sidewalk, but there's a ramp that dumps you into the street, and then you have to pick up the sidewalk on Finley. So it's pretty close. I've emailed a couple of council members that have asked about the change. So we may need to look about that little missing piece of sidewalk, but it is roughly the same or the same distance, but it does look longer, I should say.
Yeah, and it's not flat either, and
Yeah.
yeah, I would like for us maybe to look at if we can get that route to go closer to it. Maybe not right in front of it, but somehow to get it closer, so they don't have to walk across Porter and then through the parking lot. And I guess once Norman Regional starts their project on the hospital and tearing down stuff and realigning the sidewalks and the streets, that might make a big difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if they've changed their plan, their site plan since the last time I saw it or not either, but.
I will say Dr. Marilyn Dillon's here with Embark, and we've been talking with the name of the company, Healthy Living.
Yes.
Is that right? Claire, we've been talking to her, and we have a survey going that they're going to hand out to.
Okay.
I keep wanting to say awe. I don't know if that's what we should be
That's
saying,
what
but
some folks are calling it.
the awe building,
Yeah.
patrons of the awe, to ask them specifically what their transportation needs are. And Marilyn, if you want to expand on, we really want to drill down, change a route, and
Right.
make that significant investment to move things. So,
And so what we did is they reached out to us, and Taylor connected them with me, and so what we created was a really short 9-question survey that's just on our website on a fillable form, and they can just click the QR code and fill out the Smartsheet form to fill out the survey, just to kind of get some ideas, what are their ages, how often do they go, those types of things, so we can kind of gauge demand and see what the real true need is. I'm actually meeting with AWE tomorrow. I'll come
Okay.
down to Norman tomorrow to give them the cards, so we'll start on Monday.
Okay. Is there a way for the patrons to do that without? Will they have access to a device? I mean, I do run into
Oh, yes.
folks that don't have.
The cards
don't have
also say
iPhones.
if you don't have access to an electronic device,
Okay.
please call this phone number and we'll help you fill out the
Okay.
forms. Yeah, so as long as they can make a phone call, then they should be able to
Okay.
present whatever information they want to give to us. So.
Okay.
so after meeting with Claire, we figured that was the best way to go about, ask the patrons specifically what they need. That way we can make the best decision. So hopefully we can come back to you in a few months and tell you what we learned and what we think we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, my suggestion to her is going tomorrow is going to be, let's at least do this all the way through the end of January, because we are in the holiday season, and people are busy. They might take a card and then, find it 3 weeks later after the holiday season and think, oh, I forgot to do the survey, and I call them. We don't want it to be too late, so we want to give them enough time to respond, so.
And the staff there would encourage
Correct.
Yep.
them to. You might want to take this survey if you use public transit to get here.
Or it's not just about if they use transit to get there, right, Marilyn? We're just asking them
We've asked
a few other things. So
How
maybe
often do you go?
yeah, how do you
use
get there?
transit to go to other things, or is this the predominant location
Right.
that you go to?
I mean, obviously, if they say they use transit or they would use transit, we're interested in that. But they could answer it another way, and maybe all or us could use that for other purposes. But and it's kind of nice. I believe Maryland has a working relationship with Healthy Living from their work in Oklahoma City, so that connection was already there. So it's a good working relationship.
And then the only.
All of their locations that they run, because Healthy Living runs the MAPS
Right.
Center that's up on the far northwest side of Oklahoma City. And so our Embark Well Senior Health and Wellness Program supports all of the MAPS centers and the YMCA's in Oklahoma City. Hopefully this will give us some insight into what the demand is for that type of a service down here.
Okay.
From there.
Well, I will definitely look forward to hearing that.
Is it okay, Embark, Marilyn? Can you explain a little bit about Embark Well, just really quick?
Yeah.
What Embark Well
So
is?
basically what Embark Well is we've had the Older Americans Act grant for Oklahoma County Senior Services for many, many years. As we started building those MAPS 3 senior centers, we started getting phone calls from seniors in Oklahoma City. I would like to go and exercise. Well, under the rules of the Older Americans Act grant, that does not count as an eligible trip purpose. That it doesn't necessarily recognize the social determinants of health. I'm hoping that legislation will move into that in the future, but it doesn't. So we didn't really have a funding stream for that. We had a small grant that we hadn't quite finished off, and so we asked for permission to do a pilot. The pilot was so successful, we did a case study and followed 6 participants for a year through a pilot that went 3 times a week, and they shared their medical reports with us before, and mid, and afterwards. And what we found was that 83% of them reduced their A1C score if they were a diabetic. Everyone that participated got a greater health score from their physician after exercising at least 3 times a week. So we went back to the city council and said, this program is really making a difference for these seniors' lives and helping them age in place and address these social determinants of health. And so can we have a small permanent budget to continue to manage this program? So it operates 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. It only serves the MAPS and the YMCA locations. It doesn't serve private gyms or things like that. And they can go as many times this week as they want. It's door to door, and there is no charge. They just have to be 60 and live in the city.
Okay.
That's an OKC program that obviously we don't have down here, but that's something that could be birthed out of the survey, and we may want
What-
to discuss with council.
What
That's why we're kind of
vehicles,
excited about
what
the
vehicles
survey.
do you use for that? What vehicles do you use for that?
Right now, we contracted with a subcontractor, like an Uber type.
Okay, so they're like
situation.
vans or,
But our goal long-term is to do it in-house once we're moving towards that type of a system.
So it could be specifically any of the paratransit vehicles. I'm sure that type of vehicle could work. So a Cutaway, ProMaster, a transit
There's
van.
tons of different
I mean, any of those could work. But I just wanted to, since we're talking about
Yeah.
that, I wanted to make sure to mention that program.
okay, oh,
So
I'd
anyway.
be interested in knowing more about that.
Okay.
Councilor Schuler?
I mean, is that a way that we could expand our current like microtransit too? Like we could,
Yeah, we could.
That's what it sounds
so
like.
Marilyn said, she does it through a contractor right now. We could just open up during the daytime, Norman On Demand to seniors.
seniors or
Right.
something, yeah.
No charge to seniors?
Yeah, just have it open in the daytime. That's something we could look at.
I'd be
Okay.
interested to see the cost of
Yeah,
that particular expansion towards it.
the only other stop issue that I wanted to bring up was at Noble Parkway.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way for us to find out from, similar to this survey, some way to find out from employees that work in that area who might have relied on, I know there's still a stop on Main Street, but
Right.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
what we-
heard some feedback about an area that has had struggles, I think is on the positive direction at Old Parkway right now, but, removing a stop that was there were several, I guess, along there, to a commercial area that we want people to go visit, and there are employees that work there that maybe use public transit, so it's not a extremely far walk from Main Street, but maybe it is if you work at Home Depot, so.
Right. And then obviously there's one on 24th and Lindsay, but that's still pretty good. I think it's like half.
Across the
mile, but-
highway.
So I think last meeting or at another discussion, we talked about maybe expanding the Norman On Demand service west to encompass Ed Noble Parkway. So we've started that conversation with VIA to see what that would look like and cost wise. So hopefully we can come back to council soon to present that. I mentioned last month that we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it because now we're already in the next budget. So do we want to keep doing the Norman On Demand for another year? We're learning, is it working? So if we want to do that expansion, we should probably do it soon for this year, or we could do it with next year if we want to continue it. But I think that's where we landed. Maybe we could expand that service over to Ed Noble Parkway area, west of I-35.
Yeah,
So
I think we had talked maybe about also the on-demand system, but then our existing paratransit system,
right,
which serves the entire city limits.
Right.
Which we're not required to do, right? Only within 1 mile of fixed route,
3/4 a mile.
three
yeah.
quarters of a mile. But we're covering the whole city limits
Right.
with it. And really the criticism of it, or the birth of the on-demand, was that having to schedule 24 hours in advance and exploring options for making our paratransit service an on-demand service, if that was possible. And so that's something too, that when we come to having to make a decision budget-wise about whether to fund the on-demand transit, because if I know it's on the list next here, but the cost of this on-demand that same amount of money could, I don't know how many more routes that could add, fixed routes, like 3, maybe 2.
Probably closer to 2. Yeah, it's fairly expensive.
So it's kind of, and then the cost of the paratransit service and having it service the entire city limits, which I like, for sure.
Right.
I know there's a lot of elderly residents that live out by the lake that use it, but that is pretty expensive, and it not being on demand when you want it right now. So
Yeah.
I think there's a couple options that we might be thinking about going forward as far as our budget goes. We want to continue the on-demand or find a way for paratransit to become an on-demand or
Right.
just expand fixed routes or whatever, so.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're over the route changes for the most part. I know we're still talking about some of those afterwards, but now that we've kind of gotten past that, we can start exploring some of these other things. I think that sucked the life out of a lot of these other
Yes.
ideas and options until we got past that.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
and I know I'm taking longer than I normally do, but
We've needed to catch up on this
yeah.
subject a little bit.
For Norman on Demand, that last report in your packet, it's still only a few months old, but the ridership for October was 2,546. That's roughly half of the ridership total. I mean, we've only started since August, but so that kind of makes sense. But still seeing significant growth month to month. All the metrics are relatively hovering around what they were last month. Average ride duration, I'm on the second page, is about 9.9 minutes, and they ride about 3 miles on average. The passengers rider rating is staying at 4.9 out of 5 stars. So we have what's interesting is we have almost 2,600 accounts created for the app. We have about 1,453 active accounts where a user has engaged and asked for a ride request at least once. So that doesn't mean they've completed a ride. They've just, hey, can you take me, and what does that look like? About 1,000 people have actually taken a ride, and about 700 people have taken 2 or more rides. So you can see that kind of funneling down. We're hoping, again, it's only 2.5 months old, that continues to increase the usage of it, but that's kind of what it looks like right now. So anyway, I think it's overall looking pretty good, but again, we're learning as we go. So
Councilmember Schuler?
Do we know how many people have started, because we had the first 5 rides free?
6.
6.
Yes.
So has anybody hit the point where they're starting to pay for the service now?
Yeah. Let me have that for you next month.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I know for a fact
That's
some people have.
the
Oh, yeah?
system.
Okay.
The system really gives us very easily, they completed 1 ride or 2 plus. We can do it. It's just we need
Yeah.
to drill down into that 6, I guess 7 plus, 6 plus. So let's make sure we have that next month.
Yeah, just curious about,
Yeah.
how many people are like really, really, really using it
Right.
repeatedly for multiple things. And have we done, I think too, outside of just like the metric of like the stars rating, like are they leaving any comments with that? Like any like feedback that is like, positive, negative, whatever? Like, are we
Yeah.
getting feedback about like the service and the hours and the,
There is an option for them to put in text, or if they have a problem, click the box, what is the
Mm-hmm.
problem? And then provide more text. Just like the fixed route bus system, though, we're not necessarily going to put that all in your report every month.
no,
but
I'm
yes,
just,
we do
but
get that feedback.
you are getting feedback about, and so we could maybe have like, at some point, when we're maybe had 6 months or something, we could get like a general, or just like even just a report,
Right.
like
Yep.
how is it going? Because I think as we make decisions for the next budget cycle, like you're saying, and Councilmember Holman's talking about, like what is the right mix? How much money are we spending on this versus other things? And I think it's just critical to hear from the people that are actually utilizing the service.
And I should mention that in talking with VIA, they are going to start pushing out I think next week, a survey to the account holders, asking them some questions.
Perfect.
Because I'm pushing them, we need to ask them these questions. We need to know so we can inform council and the community, what riders want or don't want, and we
Yeah.
can help make that decision for the next budget. So
Perfect.
surveys galore, apparently. We're trying to
I love
ask
it.
the questions and get some answers from the passengers.
Thank you.
Councilmember Grant?
I noticed the number of completed trips requesting a wheelchair access. That's 19 for October, 31 total. Kind of curious what the jump was, but then I also noticed that in further down it says both wheelchair accessible vehicles are back in service after having a new seatbelt installed. So I was kind of curious, like,
Yeah.
how long they were out for, and if October's numbers would be higher if for the time that they were out of commission.
I don't think we saw like significant amount of people being turned away from one or both of them were not out at the same time.
Okay.
But they did have to each have a seatbelt replaced, specifically the one for the wheelchair securement area. So that jump, I think, is just a similar jump to the total number of passengers for October. So we had about half the ridership happened in October year to date. So I think that's just a corresponding, people are riding more. So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
Um,
yeah, I was just wondering too, with them being out at the very bottom, if that also affected, like there would have been more if
Yeah.
they were both in service. But also, I kind of expect maybe next time to see another increase in the
Right.
wheelchair requests. So,
Yeah, and honestly, we'll look at that starting next week. Today's the last day of the month, so we should start analyzing that data for next report.
okay. Thank you.
Councilman Paul?
I know we talked back on November 8th about the ridership numbers and the increase since the route changes, so I haven't had time to go through all this yet, but yeah, I greatly appreciate the work. Our on-demand, I've heard nothing but positive things. I know a lot of individuals who will take the bus out or get dropped off and then purposely wait there until 7 o'clock at night so they can access the on-demand.
Okay.
So I'd love to see those numbers as well. And I know we had talked about average ride times. And I know you said that we need to get some surveys together, talk to some individuals, just to, because I spent a little bit of time at the transport station down here and talking to individuals, and it was very mixed
Yeah.
as far as the route changes. I got a few positives, probably a few more negatives, just saying that they have to walk further to actually get to grocery stores and necessity type places, medical appointments. So. And when they, adding the walking time, they said, some of them told me that they went from it taking an hour for them to get to the grocery store to 2+ hours.
Okay.
So I'd love to see that if we can, as soon as we can, just get an average. And a lot of the people I talked to said that they have sent their complaints directly to Embark
Okay.
instead of to the city. And I was wondering if we could get with Embark and have them send us all the complaints that they've received maybe in the last 30 days or since the new route started.
Yeah.
That way we can kind of go through them ourselves and.
Generally, they do share those with me as they get them. So
Okay.
I'll ask them to verify that they've sent them all to me. And same with us. If we get a complaint, our contractor agreement says we need to share those with each other, so we are both informed. So I'll make sure we're getting all those.
Okay, perfect. And a lot of times people say, "Oh, well, I sent an email to them," and
Right.
nothing ever happened. But if there is any increase in going to Embark, if we can see those, that'd be great. And I know y'all talked about removing the benches at the bus stops that have gone away.
Yep.
What's it cost to pull those just the benches out? Because I know in Biloxi there are still 2 benches remaining.
Well, thankfully for us, it's not anything because
Okay.
those are Tyler Media's
Okay.
assets. So
Okay. So they'll be
they're
responsible
serving at the pleasure of the city. Obviously, they're making money off the ad revenue, and the city gets a little bit of kickback from
Well,
that.
and all that's gone. The only thing that's left are the physical benches.
Okay.
So I was just
Yeah.
curious. I mean, I'd like to see them stay because I would love to get that route reinstated or at least one stop along Biloxi somewhere
Mm-hmm.
because that's probably the biggest complaint I've got in my ward. And then the final thing with our library being closed for Lord knows how long, what are the chances we can actually get a stop at the East Side Library so our citizens can get to some kind of public education facility?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if we could look into that. So.
Going back to your comment about focusing that their trips are longer, I would love for them to reach out and or tell you and you tell us specifically what that trip is. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
I don't know how to analyze the trip
Right.
problem if I don't know the specific trip because it could be drastically different
And
from
I'll
somebody
give
else.
this to a few people, and I'll get that information to you. Like I said, I'll give you a few
Yeah,
examples.
that would
anyway.
be that would be great.
Absolutely.
And then we can really analyze that from the pre-change to the post-change. And then for the East Side Library, we do have a bus route identified in the long-range plan.
Right.
So we could look at instating that if council's interested.
Because would that be our largest library right now?
It's bigger than the west side one, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're about.
It's
they're
probably about the
similar.
same, the inside. It's
West
probably
side
roughly
was
the
a
same.
Borders bookstore originally, so it was pretty big.
But yeah, if we can see what we can do about expedite, doing
Yeah,
something
yeah.
in the meanwhile.
I know the East Side Library, we've talked about Little Axe, we've talked about more Norman Tech Center and the jail area,
Walmart to the south.
Cedar Lane, Walmart area.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot
Lots
of
of
directions I think we can go, and that's, I
There's
think,
lots of dreams.
I think that's partly why, with the on-demand, the pilot program, and what decision ever we make going forward, whether to keep going with that or to expand that to fill in those gaps. I mean, if the on-demand system is running at the same time as the fixed route and it also goes to the East Side Library, then maybe we don't need a fixed route that goes there.
Right.
So I think that's definitely something we need to think about going forward, on demand versus adding fixed routes or increasing funding and then doing both of them. I mean,
It's just a on demand, the time restraints.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
a lot of people are going to the library at 7 o'clock at night. So
right. And I know that was something I talked to you about, was what it would cost to expand the hours per hour, even expand it to Ed Noble Parkway area, those things.
And on that, I just whenever we went through that 1.5 to 2 year process, I think we were all, at least the ones that were there at the time, we talked a little bit about not trying to double dip, making the service overlap too much, because then it's almost like you're not over serving. That's not the right word, but you're kind of throwing money out the door if you have the fixed route buses running exactly at the same time as on demand, especially in areas where they're served. If we could strategically expand either of the service, I think that's the way to go. So we're not
Yeah.
putting funds into something that doesn't make sense. But
Well, helping to fill those. I mean, part of the on demand was the ADA part, and then the
right,
filling the gaps. So, like someone that lived on Biloxi on demand, could pick them up and take them to the nearest stop, or if they lived on Summer Point and use that on demand, could take them to the nearest bus stop, even, so they wouldn't have to walk half a mile or
Right.
whatever. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different angles for us to think about how we want to go forward with public transit. And I think we all would want whatever's the most efficient and will get the people that use it to the places they need to go the quickest. And so, okay, well, I'll look forward to, for sure, hearing further updates about. Are there any other questions or comments about on demand from the council? Anything further from?
thank you.
Appreciate it, Taylor. Thank you so much. All right, item number 2 on the agenda is an update and discussion of the Lindsay Street at Elm Avenue traffic signal. The history, I guess, of that was intersection with a history of traffic congestion going north and south, and there not being a turn signal or turn lane, and seeing if there was a way to address that. And staff made a change to it before school started, and I requested that we get an update on how it was working. I travel it daily, so I've seen it in action, and I overall think it's been good, but interested to see what the data might actually say.
I wish I knew how to do a slideshow from a PDF.
If you can find the controls, there's a way to go full screen on it. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe try the arrow that spreads out.
that one?
Yeah,
Well, how about that?
there you go.
There I go. All right. Yeah, this is a location that I think we've gotten. I mean, I've been with the city a little over 14 years, and I think this location probably we get the start of every semester since I've been here. It's just one of those locations where the two Elm Avenue approaches, to Lindsay Street are both single lane approaches. There's no opportunity to provide left turn phases because you can't bring up a left turn phase if you don't know that the first car in line wants to turn left. If the
Yeah.
first one wants to go straight, nobody goes anywhere. So that's a problem. So, yeah, we did get actually 2 requests this past year, or this semester, and we went ahead and addressed this with a full-blown study. We hadn't actually done a full-blown study like what we did for this one, but we did this time. So that, again, that came in June of this year. Just to look at what we could do to try to make those queue of traffic on Elm Avenue a little more manageable. So we'll talk about the process that we went through and a summary of what happened. So here's the site. Again, both the north and the southbound Elm Avenue approaches are single lane approaches where the left, the through, and the right turn movements are all made out of a single lane. For years, those north-south movements operated with a green ball, meaning that all north-south traffic movements occurred at the same time. Any significant volume of either northbound or southbound left turns would be stuck with no gaps to turn and might have to sit through multiple signal cycles. We heard this all the time.
Was bad.
Yeah, it would
It was-
back
it
up
was bad.
past Brook Street sometimes.
You know, we Councilmember Holman and I have talked about this before. This kind of started at Chautauqua.
Yeah.
We fixed Chautauqua, now Elm, and now we're looking at Asp. So it all kind of just moves down the road. Again, this was very similar to what we had at Chautauqua. We wound up split phasing Chautauqua where north and south go individually from each other, so you can make those left turn movements unimpeded. That's not the most efficient way to operate a traffic signal. It's the least efficient way to operate a traffic signal because it forces all those people who might be able to go through on a green ball, they have to stop and wait until their side actually turns green.
And it means that Lindsay Street has to stay red longer.
Because where are you going to get the green time from? It's got to come from Lindsay
So-
Street. So yeah, that's an issue. And I'll be honest, my predecessor was dead set against taking green time away from Lindsay Street.
Yeah,
That's all I'm going to say about that. But we did make this change at Chautauqua. I personally think it's been fairly successful. I haven't gotten complaints about the fact that Lindsay Street might be backing up now because now they're forced to wait a little bit longer. But I think it's very good for the people north-south on Chautauqua.
to me, this one was very. I just lived on the next block until January for
Right.
the last 12 years, so I went through here often, and the change when it was made was noticeably an improvement in my daily drive through there.
Yeah, I
So-
couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And, ironically, we've got some bond projects identified that will improve Lindsay Street. One from Pickard to Elm and one from Elm to Jenkinson. When those come along, they will provide left turn lanes on those side streets so we can get rid of this split phasing and go back to more traditional signal phasing, which will be better for everybody. But that's down the road. This kind of gets us from point A to point B.
And we'll be done without disturbing historic properties and trees and things
Yes.
like that.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask a
That's where we
clarifying
should-
question? Is this, I'm just trying to understand like how this is phasing. Is it similar to like what happens at Lindsay and at Boyd and like where the Mont is? So like the
Yes.
north-south, they have their own
It's for a
phasing,
very
and
different
then they-
reason, but
and
it's
then-
the same thing,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, I just was trying to visually understand like how that would function at the intersection.
Right.
Okay.
That intersection, because of the break in the direction of travel.
Yeah.
It's dangerous to have those people moving at the same time.
Yeah, yes. I just wanted to make sure that was in my mind where, how that was
Yes, I
functioning.
think That's
that
exactly
intersection should be a roundabout, but whatever.
Well, we have requested
it's an
funding
elbow,
to
so
do
it's-
that intersection and haven't gotten very much traction with that yet, but
Yeah.
we're
I'd be
gonna keep
interested to know
trying.
more about that, David, so
Okay,
let me know.
I will do it.
Okay.
So again, the essentially the request was to look about doing the same thing at Elm that we had done at Chautauqua for a lot of the same reasons. So we did an evaluation. We collected traffic volumes when all schools were in session, OU and Norman Public Schools. We already had a model of the Lindsay corridor from our past signal timing efforts. So the newly collected traffic volumes were just input into that existing model, and we ran scenarios with and without split phasing on Elm Street. And again, I'm not trying to get overly technical, but split phasing is again where north and south move independent of one another. Some of the results, there were two things that we really needed to look at is how did the overall intersection function when we made the change. If things got worse, that was a reason not to consider it. But there is an aspect of moving traffic along Lindsay that we have to be cognizant of. So there's a thing in our models called bandwidth, and that's it's kind of like a moving target down the street, and however many seconds that bandwidth is tall, it tells us, okay, if you get in the right spot, you can make it all the way through the corridor without having to stop.
Yeah.
So if the height of that bandwidth gets less because of this change, because we're taking green time away from Lindsay Street, that's a problem too. So we have to look at both of those things, and that's what we did in this report. How did it impact the level of service? These are just letter grades. You can see there's not really much change. There's several improvements. Midday overall level of service went from E to C. That's a pretty healthy improvement. AM stayed the same. PM, it's not great, but anybody who drives Lindsay Street knows that.
It's already bad.
Yeah,
It's
it's
already
already bad in the PM peak.
I avoid it.
This only helps you. You're trying to get on Lindsay Street, not to get along Lindsay Street.
To me, it's the three crossings
Right.
Yes.
that
Through
just like
campus.
one person presses the button and they all three turn
Right.
red, and they're not synced with Elm and they're not synced with Asp, and I don't know if you can do that.
It's hard. It's very hard to sync those together.
Frustrating sometimes when it's kind of dead and there's not much traffic at all. There's like
Right.
one car, and then a student comes and presses the button. I'm like, you could have just waited till the car went by.
Or
Now it's gonna
they-
turn red, and they're gonna sit here for 20.
Or they push the button and walk anyway.
We care about
They push that-
pedestrian priority here. Come on.
I know, but just like I don't
Nice
press
if
the
it was-
button if there's.
So the northbound and southbound levels of service on Elm stayed the same or got better. Nothing got worse. We like to talk about not just a letter grade for level of service, but we like to talk about the average seconds per vehicle of delay. And you can see that, pretty much they stayed the same. Several of them got better for the overall. The midday and the PM peaks were quite a bit better. Northbound and southbound, they were all better with the proposed condition, which we would expect. Then we look at the corridor impact of the change, and this is that bandwidth again. So eastbound Lindsay Street without the split phasing had a 5-second bandwidth. With split phasing, it had a 6-second bandwidth. That's kind of hard to explain, but okay, we'll take that. Midday went from 5 to 3, PM from 5 to 2, and westbound, you can see how those were impacted as well. I'm not overly concerned with this because 5 seconds is a pretty small bandwidth anyway. On most corridors, we'll see 15 to 25 seconds of bandwidth. So when we only have that much to start with, plus it's a very long corridor from Ed Noble Parkway all the way to 12th Avenue east, so southeast. So that's a long time, or a long distance to have much bandwidth at all. One of the things that causes tremendous bottlenecks on Lindsay Street throughout campus are those three crossings at Van Vliet Oval. We would love to have a solution for that. Quite honestly, I don't. We've thought internally about trying to make it to where they didn't operate, push the button and all three turn red, have their own controller at each one so they could be more independent, and maybe we could develop a better timing plan through that. It's just,
I could see that being problematic though too.
yes.
Where if like one of them's red and the other are green,
Right.
and they switch to red and that one.
And you can't do that without spending $60,000 to order 2 more cabinets, so
So,
So close
Yeah.
together.
they are.
well, that's partly what I'm hopeful with the Lindsay Street project from Elm to Jenkins is that we'll be able to work with, and I've mentioned this to President Harris directly, being able to work with the university on maybe coming up with additional funding to our bond funds to do something, one that would help the university, a
Right.
main corridor that's running right through the middle of the campus. And I know they've expressed interest in closing it completely, but I just don't see how that, there's no other east-west way to get around that part of town.
But, you know, even if, because they are so close together, could you eliminate one of the 3 maybe?
Or have like one bigger one,
Right.
or separating them could be a way too, I think. If OU and the city, and we got federal funds, and we were able to come up with some kind of mega project, I don't know, but a way where it's, maybe the street's lowered slightly and they have walkways over it or something, Councilmember Schuler?
Yeah, I don't think that it's just those walkways either.
Oh,
Like
no,
it,
it's
it is the, like those are part of it, but I feel like if you drive through that area, you get stuck by one or the other, one of the 3 of them, and then as it turns green, like you're able to pass freely. So like uncoupling them doesn't make sense to me, just in like the way that traffic flows. I just think that it's tough as you have like Elm, then you have those, then you have Asp, and then you have Jenkins.
Right.
Like it is just, and there's lots of crossing at
All
all
of
of them.
Right.
So like it's all just, you know, all of those intersections plus the crosswalks in between Elm and Asp. So like I don't know that I think a larger solution has to address all of that, not just the
No, I agree.
yeah. I
I
mean like
agree.
it is a
That's
just
what
a
I'm hoping with
difficult
the
corridor.
Lindsay Street project, is that whole corridor.
Yeah.
Just think if you could consolidate all 3 of those crossings into one in the middle. Now when traffic starts to build up from that light being red, maybe it doesn't impact Elm as much, so that people that do get the green have a place to turn to.
If that crossing in front of Dale Tower was not there, because even now,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the backup on Elm that I used to, but often now cars are having a hard time turning left to go east on Lindsay because the traffic is stopped at the light at Dale Tower, and it's backed up all the way to Elm Street. And so people trying to turn off of Elm onto Lindsay can't, so they're blocking the whole intersection. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's why I said I'm hopeful that we can work with OU on this project going, we have a few years. And same, like with the Jenkins intersection as well, I don't see a big as much of a traffic issue there, but there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, and I'm always thinking, man, they're having to cross 5 lanes of traffic that's built up, that like pent up from these corridor, and now they're trying to speed through. And so in future plans, being able to maybe redesign that intersection in a way that's easier for pedestrians to get across it, with a median that's out to it or something. But I think there's a real opportunity with that project for us to do something really transformative to that area that addresses these problems,
Right.
makes it look nicer, and
Right.
all that stuff.
Right.
So
And to your point, there is no one problem that's the root of all this. It's a
That's why I
combination.
avoid that section particularly. Only when I worked on campus was I routinely driving around that area.
I think there's a lot of people who look at the clock and say, probably class change time.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best time to be
Boyd
driving
is
through it.
easier.
Right. Boy, it is easier.
sometimes I go down Jenkins to Timberdale and go all the way down to Chautauqua, or even all the way to Pickard, and then go over to Lindsay and then keep going west.
Yeah.
So that's not the best way, but it's
No. But it's what you figured out works for you. Okay. We talked about that. Well, that's pretty much it. We've made the changes. Again, I haven't got any negative feedback from the implementation. I think people are happy with it.
I think, yeah, and that I've noticed in the peak time that Lindsay maybe has a little bit more backup than it did before, but I expected that was probably going to be the case. So, but I'm glad to see that at least the data shows it seems mostly an improvement.
Right.
So,
Well, and again, this is just to get us until those other projects come along and can address
And so
hopefully
you're
everything.
planning to do the same thing at Aspen, Lindsay? The
Yes,
dedicated arrows?
right. That's probably gonna be scheduled over the winter break. Because it will involve aerial work in our bucket truck to change signal heads and things like that, so
Okay.
we don't wanna be out there when students are there.
Any other comments or questions about that? Okay. Thank you, David. I appreciate that update. And then the third item on the agenda is the update and discussion regarding the recent intersection traffic control changes. And so I'd requested this item because I think we've all seen the feedback about,
Have we done any changes?
Yeah, quite a few
About,
in the center of town.
What do
Uh,
you mean?
two-stop intersections now being four-stop, or former four-way intersections now being two-way, and a lot of folks asking what the methodology is that the city staff uses, and I said, well, like, we didn't vote to do that. There's city staff evaluated, they had feedback. I know based off, you use several factors to make that decision, and then it's an administrative thing. So, but I figured it'd be good for you to give an update about how we go about those decisions in the city of Norman
Okay,
and why.
and why? And why so many?
Yeah, all at once too, yeah.
I will just start by saying that this year has been unusual. I mean, we started over the summer, all these requests were coming in, and our list of intersections to evaluate kept growing and growing and growing because we couldn't really collect any meaningful data until all the schools came back into session. So we got to September and had this list of like 15 intersections we had to evaluate. We're still getting to the bottom of that list. It just takes time.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a situation like that.
Where were most of them, out of curiosity?
Oh, they were all over. I've got a map, but I don't want to. She's going to show you now.
I was just wondering how many were in the center of town, but I see them out in other areas.
Yeah, they're
too.
all over the place. I mean, there was no one particular ward that stood out above any others. They were everywhere. So we'll talk a little bit about how we as staff hear about the need for changes, the engineering studies that go into every single one of those requests, and it's important to recognize that sometimes we recommend changes, sometimes we don't. They're not all yes every time. So the common ways that we hear about it is citizens may contact us directly. They contact us through the Action Center. They might reach out to one of you, and you reach out to us. We've had requests come from other city employees. So one of the things that we do is, our goal is to prepare that engineering study that's on the right part of the screen. There's traffic volume data to collect, there's collision reports to go through to see what kind of history each particular location might have, what types of collisions are happening, because the type of collision is important in determining if a change is needed or not. Some types of collisions you couldn't help by making a change in traffic control. If you got people who are getting involved in collisions at the middle of the intersection where they might be right angle collisions, if you made everybody stop, that type of collision should go away. Now, people still run stop signs, people still are inattentive in the driving task and might run through a stop sign. People are creatures of habit. I mean, we're hearing a lot of things about changes that we've made, and most of it is related to the fact that, there's never been something there and all of a sudden there's something new.
Yes.
Yes. Or there was something there all the time and now it's gone.
I think that one's the harder one.
Yeah.
Yes.
When it was a four-way and isn't anymore.
And-
then
and
people are like,
I've actually got a copy for each of you, the intersection evaluation that was done for Jones and Acres, because
Perfect.
there is a picture in the back that tells the entire story.
oh
So,
yeah, yeah.
We're kind of bound by our traffic code, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices that's adopted in our code of ordinances, as Mr. O'Leary likes to say, as our traffic code. There's minimum traffic volumes through the intersection that have to be met to make a change. There's collision history that can trump if there's no traffic volume there necessarily. There's things like sight distance limitations. One of the best sight distance limitation stories we have is Boyd and Pickard,
Yeah.
where that building sits on the southeast corner.
Yeah.
You can't see anything till you're out in the street. People didn't like that.
Oh, I'm still hearing that my friends don't like that when they're like driving to work.
And if you're northbound on Pickard,
I agree.
you can't see
Which I
anything.
used when I lived on college. Pickard was the street I used every day, pretty much to get to Main Street. Was, and yeah, when you have a through fare basically on Boyd where you don't have to stop for a mile,
Yeah, it's hard.
and then all of a sudden you have a
Yep,
same thing on Chautauqua and Timberdale where
exactly.
it was a through through fare all the way, and now you gotta. But it was hard to when you're on Timberdale going west. The hill is coming down. You can't see cars coming very easily, so it made sense.
Normally, this comes into play on more rural intersections where, roads are paved over cart paths,
Yeah.
and there's no real effort to get rid of the vertical curvature of the road. So you pull up and you might be able to see 100 feet on a 50-mile-an-hour road. It's just not safe.
Yeah.
So that's generally when this comes into play, but that one at Boyd and Pickard is the best urban example that we have. Lots of requests the last 6 months. This is a list of all the intersections. I could have updated this today because there's even 3 more that could be added to the list now. Here's a map of where they're at. So they're all over the place. Ironically, only one is really.
Did you request that at Timberdale?
Yeah, I got asked
Okay,
by
so-
constituents to, they were worried about the speeding,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Chautauqua
yeah.
Timberdale one.
Right.
People did drive fast.
I mean, I will note 6 of those are in Ward 4. Based on that.
They weren't
map.
all for me.
Probably.
Yeah. So.
Parking you follow me.
But,
The Maine and Finley one definitely caught people's attention too, because that was another, uninterrupted stop all the way to 12th because of the roundabout. So from Porter, you could just have a free
but there,
shot.
I saw it said Citizen at Streetwise was the one who brought the Main Street and Finley Avenue one
Yes.
forward. Can you elaborate on Streetwise?
Streetwise, I did not attend, but a lady who works for me attended. It was an event where citizens were coming in and talking about different aspects of city.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
that's
gonna say
right.
there was I remember
was at
an
the-
accident at Main Street in Finley that might have prompted that feedback. But then, how these things go. Now I've literally got a call that I got to return from somebody else who thinks that 4-way is a bad idea, and a truck ran through it, and it was at sunset. So you have if you're traveling west, that's going to be an issue.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've heard feedback about that one.
No, I know. I mean, we did one just down the street a couple of years ago at Gray in Finley. And it was the same thing there. But Gray had that weird little dip. It
And
still
there's
has that
schools
weird
over
little
there,
dip, so
too.
people were still in the school, right?
Yeah.
But the kids are still crossing at Maine, so I mean, that factored into our decision that that's what we needed to do, but.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I'm not going to complain about a 4-way on some of these situations. I understand how other people get frustrated because they think they should get somewhere faster, but I know about the accidents. I know about the pedestrian foot traffic. As somebody who lives in that area, I'm not particularly bothered by this. And they have the orange flags that let you know that a change has
Right.
happened.
People have to slow down.
And I will say also as a creature of habit, I have to remind myself that I don't stop on Acres at Jones.
I know.
But I would say the ones that came on Gray, maybe last year-ish, in general, because the sun is setting in the west and sometimes when you're on there and you can't see, I like a 4-way because then everybody has to stop and
Right.
you can actually see the traffic.
Mhm.
So yeah. But I was curious with or is that further in the presentation, the one at Acres and Jones?
Well, it's not really it's part of the presentation because it was on the list. I'm not gonna speak specifically about Acres and Jones,
But you have it if.
but I have the report to hand out to you.
I would look at it, yes.
Okay.
I was just kind of curious because I do remember getting some feedback from people who I think lived on Jones about that intersection. So, but I didn't realize the city employee also had been a part of that process.
Right. Yeah, this guy drove it every day and said, he's the first one that brought it to my attention. I should have seen that, but the fact that you were forcing that eastbound traffic on Acres to stop and the railroad tracks right there. The picture in the back of the report was taken from the Cleveland County Assessor's website, an aerial photograph, and it shows people stacked here, people approaching on this side of the tracks, and people approaching on this side of James Garner. So that all these cars are gonna have to stop, and you can just see how the queue is gonna be backed up over the railroad tracks. And that's just dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I get the feedback, but also there's a reason.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. No, I mean, we hear the feedback too. I mean, people are not bashful. I like to tell people that I don't know how many licensed drivers there are in Norman, but they have that thing called a driver's license, and that makes them a traffic engineer.
Yes.
Makes it hard for me to do my job.
Yeah, and I would say some of the feedback too with the Boyd and Pickard, generally I've heard positive, except for the time it takes for people to get used
Yeah.
to the change. So when people are inconsiderate because they're concerned about where they're going, so they block driveways of other people who need to get home too. Basically my feedback to that person was, well, it takes time to adapt to a change and people will understand, stop blocking driveways when
Right.
you're queuing up at the stop sign. So, and so far I haven't heard a thing, in the months past, so.
And you would certainly hope it gets less and less over time as people get used to it. But yeah, we've heard that complaint about, I could name every time we've made a four-way stop, somebody complains that, well, now the mailman can't get to my mailbox to deliver my mail, or the garbage truck can't get there to pick up because traffic's backed up. It's like, it can't be that bad.
No, but it's just a period of adjustment.
It is. I know. So these are the locations where we recommended changes in control. 48th and Franklin, 48th Northwest and Franklin, 48th and Northeast in Rock Creek. That one was particularly interesting because if you recall, we had a fatal accident there, 2 days before we made the change, and you don't believe how many calls I got because why did you wait till somebody got killed to do this?
I didn't.
We were already going to do it.
Yeah.
Just it
We had already done the study.
unfortunately didn't happen fast enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Of course, that was inattention too, so.
But I would say, to that point
Yeah.
too, it's like you can have those things and people can still go through them. Like
Right.
the call I got earlier this week
Sure.
about the truck that blew through the four-way at Main and Finley. So
I mean, Robinson and Flood recently, right? Someone was killed
Yes.
at getting rear-ended at a high. There's a traffic light there, and
Right.
my understanding is that the where the most fatality accidents occur are in signalized intersections. People turning left and getting sideswiped.
Well, and that's because it's a signalized intersection. It probably carries more traffic than an
Yes.
unsignalized intersection, so your exposure is a lot higher. Speeds can be higher.
Right. That's why I know some folks are skeptical of them, but why I've always been so supportive of roundabouts, because the data shows they just so drastically reduce fatality accidents by causing people, they force people to slow down, and it eliminates all those angles. I forget how many in a four-way intersection, how many angles of
Yeah, it's like 3/4
points of attack where you could be hit.
Right, the points of conflict are
Compared to a
reduced.
roundabout where it's much less. And so, that's, I think, a concern about those big intersections like that.
Well, and I think we're moving that direction on several locations to consider roundabouts. Let's see. Pickard and Timberdale, site distance issues. Acres and Jones, again, potential to back up over the railroad tracks. Chautauqua and Timberdale, the traffic volume criteria was actually met there. Maine and Finley, the collision requirements were met, plus the presence of the school traffic. So those were the two main reasons why we made a change there. Locations where we didn't recommend any change in control. We had a request to evaluate Park and Eufaula. We get this all the time. This location pops up quite often. But this time, we found evidence of illegal parking. So we reached out to parking enforcement and said, hey, can you do something about trying to get this parking removed? Because it's causing sight distance problems. It's not a tree, it's not a bush, it's not a house, it's not, a parked car in front of, well, like Maine and Finley, the neighbors, or the people that live along that street, they park in front of their house and it creates a sight distance problem, but they're not illegally parked.
Right.
This was on-street parking that was illegal. Ponca and Comanche. We had similar issues there where there was illegal parking. We asked the parking enforcement officers to address it. Boyd and Garrison was kind of a curious one because it's right there next to Alcott Middle School. I wasn't real sure what the problem was there, but we evaluated it and didn't find anything.
I didn't hear about this, and I saw that it was a citizen issued complaint about it. My assumption is that it's around school
Sure.
time, but like they always have somebody that's out with the stop sign and like helping students cross the street right there. So I mean that's the only time that I see that that's really an issue.
Right. That's why I was kind of
Yeah.
taken aback by the request.
Because yeah, they always have someone that's signaling with stop sign and waving you down and making sure. And plus, it's the whole area right there is a school zone, so like you shouldn't be going that fast.
I know the SROs are actually going out and doing a lot of
Yes,
the
I've
stop signing
seen
and
some of
stuff now
that.
as well in traffic
Yeah, we also have
in the
some
main
I think
intersections.
volunteers that I see out there doing that, and I'm sure that one too is not. It's very close to McGee
Yes.
too. So like even putting one there would be probably not
Not the best place
the
for it.
best place for one. Yeah. So I was wondering what the issue was that
Yeah.
they were complaining about, but
And then the last one was 36 Southwest at Western View Drive, Willow Bend Road. That's a location where it's challenging because there's a traffic light at Main and 36, and there's a traffic light at Lindsay and at Noble, but nothing in between.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a guy today who wants me to, gotta slow that traffic down there. Deer getting hit and everything else. It's like, okay, but I don't know that there's anything we can really do about that. We could definitely ask the police to enforce it. I said, we'll do a study. We'll figure out when the times that make sense for the police to come out there and do some speed limit enforcement and see if there's anything else we can do. But
4-lane arterial road that's a straightaway.
right.
I mean, the curve is a curve there, the extension, but it's easy to speed on both.
Right,
of
there's
them.
no reason to slow down there.
Councilmember Schuler.
yeah. I have I guess an updated request
Okay.
that I continually hear from residents in Ward 2 is Wiley and Maine, which is where the Rose Rock School
Yes.
is, and it kind of is slightly like their driveway is not aligned with Wiley there, but I would say that's like the raceway of Main Street. So I continually hear about that. When was the last time that we did a study?
Say when we approved the Rose Rock.
No, we've done an update since.
remember that
then,
being a
and
discussion
It
when we
did
approved
meet
that, yeah.
signal warrants.
So it's just the cost at this
Yeah,
point?
it's just, we don't have any plans developed or it's not in line for any type of funding, so.
Okay, I'll talk to you offline
We
about
can
that.
definitely get it in
Yeah,
line though, that's
okay.
fine, that's an easy fix.
I have a question.
Yeah, Councilor
So when you go through these and some get implemented and some don't, do you notify, especially if it's coming from a citizen or employee and not coming through
I
us?
take their number down and call them.
And let 'em
with the
know what the-
results. Yes,
Okay, cool.
sometimes they take it well, sometimes they don't.
Depending
Has
on
to
if
be
you're doing what
accepted.
they want.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, if I'm doing what they want, I probably am less likely to call them because they're gonna see the change eventually anyway, so.
I mean, people get upset whether the street's in bad shape and we start fixing it and they're mad about the
Right.
construction.
Exactly.
Yeah, Stinson and George was a real two over the years in Ward 7 that we finally got remedied, but.
Yes.
Yep.
And
That's
I
it.
just ask, like, generally for the public watching, how much do these traffic studies and four-way stops or two-way stops, these changes generally cost to implement?
Well, that's hard to, because everything is location specific, but I'll tell you that we were awarded a grant with the absentee Shawnee tribe in January. And one of the things that we did was put in the cost of it, of the stop signs that we were gonna convert. About $1,500 to convert a two-way stop to a four-way stop.
1,500.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money. And
Does the traffic study cost a good chunk, or?
well, it's done in-house,
Oh, okay, so staff time.
staff time.
We make all of our signs and
Yeah.
all that stuff
We did that
in-house
too.
too, so yeah.
How much is a signalized intersection, roughly?
Used to be $250,000.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's approaching 300,000 now.
yeah, okay.
If we're looking at,
That's what I thought.
It's got fiber connected to it, it's even
and
higher.
and if we're looking at having to do any additional lanes, we're now, when we're doing our larger capital projects, we're starting at $800,000 for a signalized intersection, preventing any widening in that intersection at all.
So like just for the signaling would be like
The
300K.
signals, we're looking at 300,000 to 400,000
Okay.
when we're doing the federally funded projects.
Okay,
So the,
but any additional, yeah, lane,
There are some
Things.
intersections that we're seeing at $1.2 to $1.5 million just for the intersection alone.
okay.
Well, 12th and High Meadows came in about 1.8, wasn't it?
Yeah.
what about, just because I'm curious, Eufaula and Porter, is, because I know we're waiting on lights,
The
but,
poles to come in.
yeah, was that in the 800,000 range, or?
That one,
replacing
because
the
we're just replacing the poles, we didn't have to do any additional lane changes there.
Or,
So that one
Okay.
wasn't quite that expensive, but that one, we are just waiting on delivery of the poles. And I think the latest I heard is,
Should be any day,
no, it's been moved out.
even further now.
Yeah, it's gotten moved out now to February or March.
oh, wow.
We're totally at the delivery of the company producing those. That's why as we got that project closer to Johnson, we skipped Johnson and left the lights in place. We're gonna come back and do that intersection when we get the signals. It may have been late, I'm sorry, it may have been January when those poles are coming in, but they have been delayed further than what we initially expected. We were looking at kind of doing a little bit of kind of a winter shutdown there, and we're trying to work with them to make sure that when the poles are here, no matter what's going on, they get put up at Eufaula to get that back in service. We
Still
all
so
feel
weird.
that, we all feel that
Yeah.
pressure at that one that needs to be completed.
Has it
and
been
done with.
fairly safe-ish, though? Like, not, I haven't heard of any real accidents or pedestrians
I
getting
think-
hit, but
I haven't heard of anything either, and it kind of sounds like people are probably making other
Avoiding.
alternative changes to their travel paths to.
Border
to
flow's
make
better.
Changes.
Without it.
That's your bandwidth now, doesn't
I
it?
don't see it backing up with people trying to turn left anymore.
Yeah.
People are just able to turn.
And I do see like a pedestrian crossing thing.
That's
so that
the
people-
biggest
Yeah.
complaint, I
Yeah.
think, was from Yellow Dog, that,
Because
there
there's not
are
another
people-
one to get between Maine and
right, and
Alameda.
people weren't yielding to the pedestrians in the crosswalk, and, yeah, I get that. So, yeah, we did have those signs put up.
Okay. Any final comments or questions? Okay.
You want
Well,
your,
thank you very much,
you want your
staff.
Christmas gifts?
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Reading
you.
traffic data. But yes, thank you all for being here. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.